for having a chance to deliver my speech among the great students in Korean Seoul University, and my speech will be on the directions on building Korean model in providing ODA, which is official development assistant, into the direction what real public recipients want and how it can be efficiently endowed to them in the most adequate form of capital. I think ODA provision, which is usually represented as monetary support from government, is not limited to this form of material support from the officials. So I suggest that the provision of ODA can be conducted in the form of more public-oriented capitals, which is different from standard monetary provision to national development. So in this context, I regarded that the ODA provision can be done in providing soft power, which is one of the systematic traits of the public policy as well. So the title and also the topic of my paper is Non-Governmental and Middle Power Identity Model in Korea. Based on this sentence, the important trait of my speech is finding an alternative model in the perspective out of the previous official endowment from the government. So based on what I said in the introduction, the general viewpoint in the article is focusing on the usage of the soft power and will be extended to using educational capitals as the reference in the later on. In my research, the ODA conducted in public-oriented direction or by soft power relevant capital is referred as the term qualitative ODA, which is contrast to the quantitative ODA method that are delivered to the recipient country in fiscal or financial form by the government. Before going on to the body of my research, I will tell the directive framework of my research, which is referred as Sustainable Development Goals. The framework of qualitative ODA is primarily based on Sustainable Development Goals. The agenda based on ODA is particularly important in qualitative ODA because Sustainable Development Goal embraces the participation of non-governmental organizations and multi-stakeholderism, and foremost, the participants who are in the position of the public. Therefore, Sustainable Development Goal agenda is conducted as an initiative of extensive partnership that is focused on the public-oriented recipients. Therefore, based on the extensiveness and public-oriented traits of Sustainable Development Goal, the background of the article is based on the extension of successive problems in ODA programs, which is the successive question on transparency of aid and the derived effectiveness. These two questions have been debated even in this era of Sustainable Development Goal in the context of inducing the practical efficiency. Although the general aim of Sustainable Development Goals is founded on the most ideal initiative to embrace the participation from non-governmental actors and recipients countries in ODA provision, there has been a consistent suggestion of building on the practical systematic strategy from the endowment. For instance, there is a concept named Samaritan's Dilemma in the process of embracing public donors from the process of ODA. This is the dilemma that is proceeded when attracting donors, especially from the non-governmental sector from the finance, such as private investment. Considering the nature of these kind of donors, which are usually referred as the private companies, The current method of involving actors from the outside of government sector, which has a trait of the monetary intention, has a limitation in providing the constant form of supports. This limitation becomes more evident based on the decrease of total amount of public-private partnership from 2001 to 2014. Based on the statistical data in OECD, there has been a drastic decrease of finance support from about 400 billion to 200 billion between 2011 and 2014. Consequently, the audio provision by financial, monetary, or other forms of material support has limitation because these kinds of quantitative supports must secure the practical outcome. Based on the current limitation of ODA provision in quantitative methods, the article focused on setting the importance of the development and investment from the non-government agent, which are deviated from the formal provision of the supports, which is in the section of the hard power previously. In this context, finding the most susceptible area of inducing the most effective and consistent ODA outside of the quantitative method matters in building the potential Korean ODA model. Again, Korean ODA model should be established on the understanding of these limitations not only in the previous quantitative method of ODA provision, but also the limitation in embracing the non-governmental actors that only focus on material efficiency from the previous method. And now on, I will briefly mention about the state of the invested sector in bilateral aid from the governments and the realistic limit induced from these programs. Among the sectors suggested by the Korean statistics, the social infrastructure and the services are the most invested sector among the aids provision of the Korean government, and among this sector, education has been gradually increased in the as a donation since the 2005. Inversely, the total amount of the bilateral aids in the provision of the ODA has been decreasing. So the state of the Korean bilateral aid investment indicates that the Korea is still in the weak state in providing the quantitative aid in general, but it has a strong point in providing the qualitative aid, especially considering the sectors of the education. In this case, the potential ODA provision method of qualitative capital can be examined by using the capital such as education. So considering the state of the Korean ODA program in the current state, I thought that it is more plausible to say that the diplomatic position of Korea in the bilateral relationship in ODA is mostly well fitted to the term middle power country in both scale and the direction of donating. In this premise, the middle power state is what I fundamentally put the basis on in the basic norm of providing soft power-oriented supports from the cultural to education, and based on this norm, I thought that Korean ODA provision should be established in the context of providing constant support as the representative case of the middle power. Next, I have to mention that there is a comparative case study of ODA provision between Korea and Japan, and also between Korea and Australia. Firstly, I choose the Japanese case of ODA such as JICA. to put it into the comparative case because there has been a much similarity in the systematic basis between the ODA provision of Korea and Japan. I thought that putting Japanese ODA agency in JICA in the first comparative case will be meaningful of finding this systematical development on how the non-governmental provision has been conducted. For instance, I found out that there were similar traits between Korea and Japan in showing the highest rate of bilateral aid in sectors of social infrastructure and also in the sector of education. And these activities has been conducted in the particular areas of the association countries such as Vietnam and Indonesia. So these traits gives references of how the systematic basis of Korean ODA has been built. So along with this comparison, the case of Australia is introduced for building identities of Korea as a donor country of the middle power for providing the soft power capital such as education. Australia has been the middle power country that provided educational aids internationally, such as Colombo Scholarship. Although this is done by the government, but this has a meaningful reference in providing how the public-oriented capital should be provided to the recipients in the way that actual recipients really wants to. So consequently, the Korean model of ODA has been built upon the public and middle power-oriented capital. However, this process must be conducted by recognizing the limitation of both previous quantitative direction of government, but also the embracement of non-governmental actors. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.